name is Rowdy, and I'm one of the camp nurses. And I want to talk to you today about Cancer 101. Well, actually, we're not going to talk about cancer. We're just going to talk about 101. That's all the things that you need to know to be successful at camp in terms of all the things that have to do with nurses, care cabins, and kids that have come to camp. So I'm going to talk to you about several things that you need to know. And some of them seem really, really basic, but if you don't do them, we can have a really unbasic camp. And we don't want to do that. We want camp to not have anything to do with being sick. And in order to do that, there are some important things we have to do as adults. So, first thing I want to talk about, oh wait, I need to introduce you to my friend. This is Cece. Her name is actually Care, and her middle name is Cabin. Her last name, of course, is Bear, but we call her Cece. And I think that she's a little overdressed. We really don't want to look quite so hospital-y with the kids at camp, so wearing scrubs is not what we would do. But at the moment, she can keep her scrubs on, and she's going to be around camp helping us remember some of the things we're talking about. So the first thing I want to talk about is hand hygiene. I realize that hand hygiene feels like a pretty basic thing to you. We're going to wash our hands at camp just as often as we do at home, and if Rowdy has her way and Cece has her way, we'll wash more often even. We have some helps at camp. One of them is, yes, good old hand sanitizer, and that's going to be available to you in your cabins and at the dinner, at the dining room, in a lot of different places, and don't be afraid to use it. But there's one thing I want you to know, it doesn't take the place of soap and water. So even though you'll be using hand sanitizer several times a day, in fact many times a day, just as often or more, you will be using good soap and water. When you take hand sanitizer or soap and water, you make sure that all of your hand and in between your fingers, and especially on your thumbs, gets nice and clean. Doesn't that smell good, Cece? Yeah, pretty cool. Coughing and sore throats and toilet habits and general things like staying clean and sneezing and all those things are really common things that happen at camp. Now, we would hope that we wouldn't have a lot of coughing and sneezing because we'd like to think that nobody is sick when they came to camp. And the strange thing is that sometimes our coughing and sneezing at camp doesn't mean they are sick. Much of the time, it means that they're dry, that the weather is hot, and their mucous membranes are drying out, and they're doing a lot of coughing and sneezing. They may have some allergies. A lot of good reasons that they could be coughing and sneezing. However, same things as any place else. Coughing this way, sneezing this way, watching the hands, and being careful that as soon as you have coughed, sneezed, or done any of that, you're going to use hand sanitizer or better, soap and water. In the process of having sore throats and things like that, we need to see those kids in the care cabin, and we'll talk a little more about that, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're sick. It probably means that they haven't had enough water. One of the things about general cleanliness at camp is that we try really hard to stay a little bit neat and really clean. We don't have to stay as neat as we do at home in rooms, but honestly, Cece, when you just take things off and throw them down, it gets really hard to figure out whose equipment is whose. And so once a day at least, you're going to patrol your cabin and pick up everything and make sure that everybody's things are folded and go back into their own pile so that we know which kid owns what. It's more important than that, though. If a child gets sick in the middle of the night or has to go home for some unexpected reason, we want to be able to come into your cabin and get him packed up without having to worry about taking all the other kids' things home at the same time. We always want to be able to walk carefully across your cabins And so we keep a good eye on that, and once a day we have inspections. So you'll want to have clean cabins. One of the things we find is that clean cabins mean cleaner kids mean a healthier camp, and that's really what we're all about. I want to talk about sun, because hopefully we're going to have a lot of sun at camp. Nothing is as great as a nice sunny week when we're at camp. But there are some important things that we have to work on, and the first one is protecting ourselves against that sun. So, sunscreen, really, really important thing at camp. Very important in all parts of your life, all the time. But at camp, we get really, really worried about it. We do not let anybody at camp, and that means adults as well as children, and even bears, go without sunscreen. So everybody is going to use a lot of sunscreen. How much sunscreen do you use? Oh, a lot. So in the morning, when you get up in the morning and you get dressed and you're ready to go outside, and you stop, and everybody gets sunscreen. And it gets put on in at least this much per child. At least. So it takes about 2 ounces of sunscreen for every application in order to adequately do it. So the first thing you're going to do is to use lots of sunscreen, and you're going to get it on everywhere. Don't forget, not just the nose. Usually get the nose. Don't forget the tops of the ears, backs of the ears, and up here at the hairline. On the backs of the hands, really important place, and any place that's sticking out that has the sun can reach during the day. So you're going to take about 2 ounces of sunscreen and slather it on. There's Rowdy's favorite word. Well, right next to more water. You are going to do that when you first get up and when you start going outside, and you're going to do it every 2 hours. Every 2 hours? Yes, every 2 hours. Except you might do it more often than that. You might do it more often than that if you're going swimming. So just before you go swimming, and the minute you get out of swimming, you're going to put more sunscreen on, and it's going to get slathered, and it's going to be, everywhere. Tops of ears, tops of hands, any piece that sticks out. Sunscreen, 2 ounces every 2 hours. The next thing that happens with sun is that it dehydrates us, and it makes us very thirsty. The problem is it doesn't make us as thirsty as we should get for the amount of water that we need. And so we need so much water when we are at camp. I can promise you that not a single one of you will get as much water as you should get. I can promise you that the first question any nurse, including Rowdy and Cece, are going to ask you when you come complaining of anything from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes, the first question will be, how much water have you had? And you will tell us, and we will say, not enough. So the rule is at least 4 ounces every hour, but I want you to think about 8 ounces, because 8 ounces is a regular glass. Everybody's going to have a water bottle at camp. Figure out how much water is in there, divide it by how many hours it's going to last. It should be empty by the time all those ounces are gone if you're using 8 ounces of water. Really important, because hydration is an absolute enemy for us. And we can get all kinds of heat toxicity from not having enough water. So some of the symptoms that you would be looking for in your kids and in you will be lightheadedness, dizziness, nausea, seeing spots, being a little disoriented, not feeling right, maybe feeling cold but sweaty, maybe not sweating at all. any of those things, the first thing is to get out of the sun, start getting water in, and get to the care cabin. Right, Cece? Oh, in fact, it's so important that I think Cece is going to be talking to you about it every day.
Cece Bear says, don't forget 2 ounces of sunscreen every 2 hours and 8 ounces of water every hour.
Whoa! It's a lot of water and a lot of sunscreen. If you don't do it, we'll all be in trouble and we'll not be having a healthy camp. Okay, I want to talk to you about this place called the Care Cabin. It's the greatest place in the world, except that it's a place for you to try to avoid. The Care Cabin is really an infirmary. It's the place where the nurses hang out, where the doctor is available, and where we can take care of sick kids. Well, we don't want sick kids at camp, do we? But sometimes, in order to keep from being sick, you're going to need to bring your kids to the Care Cabin. So a few things I want you to know about it. First of all, we want the experience of coming to the Care Cabin to be the least important thing that the kid does during the day. We want you to have much more fun at camp than being at the Care Cabin. And so we're going to do everything we can to keep those visits to the Care Cabin as infrequent as possible. I know you're lovable, but they need to go do other things more. And then to be there as short a period of time as possible. So, few things you need to know about it. It's staffed by nurses. All of us registered nurses, and the doctors are there sometimes, and sometimes they aren't, but they are always available to us. And these are the pediatric oncology doctors. These are pediatric oncology nurses, plus some other mix of other kinds of nurses. So lots of nurses will be around and will all be able to help you when you get to the Care Cabin. When do you come to the Care Cabin? Well, it doesn't open up until 8 o'clock in the morning, but it's open until after the last campfire at night. We try really hard to close up by 10 o'clock at night, but if there's a late campfire, you can't help that. And how are you supposed to know if your kid has meds and needs to come to the Care Cabin? Well, you're going to get a list of things that tell you, a list of medications that tell you what time you're going to bring the kiddo to the Care Cabin. So there's some other things about the Care Cabin that I want you to know, and we'll talk about that next time. See you later. Bye. Oh, one more thing.
Cece Bear says, don't forget 2 ounces of sunscreen every 2 hours and 8 ounces of water every hour.
Good job, Bear.